everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we're going to cover how to use the particle koso to add emphasis to the word or the clause or even the phrase that basically immediately precedes it. Alright, so this is going to be one of those videos that seems pretty darn simple from the start. It's just a word koso. It's a particle. It should just have one function, but just because of how contextual the topic is, there are going to be a lot of different cases and therefore a lot of different types of examples. So just to keep this video from being not too long, we're only going to do one example per case basically, but make sure if you want some other examples of each case, check out the description below for plenty more examples. If the whole write-out for this lesson doesn't even fit in the description down there, we'll provide a link to a page where you can go to for the full script for this video, or not just this video, but the full script for this lesson and plenty more examples than the number that we'll cover right now. Okay, so like I said, basically the function, the very general function of koso here is basically we're going to add it after something and it's going to emphasize that thing that we added it after. Because the usage of this particle is pretty darn contextual and because there isn't an English equivalent to it, the translation can vary a decent amount, but some pretty common translations of koso include for sure, very, precisely, in particular, exactly, only, definitely, and etc. Another thing to note is that when we use this particle and it appears basically in the place of the particles wa, ga, or o, or maybe not so much in place of them, but like next to them, then we just drop those particles. But if we do the same thing with the particles de and ni or some other particles that aren't wa, ga, and o, then those particles aren't dropped. Basically, we just add koso right after them. So for example, instead of dropping the ni, we would just have ni koso, or instead of dropping the de, we'll just have de koso. Okay, so now let's just jump into a few example sentences. Perhaps the most common word or thing that koso is used for are noun words, and in particular the types of noun words that are really commonly used with koso are time-related words or demonstrative pronouns. And so now you're going to see some of those in the examples that we are now going to cover. So for our first example sentence, we have the line ima koso koudou no toki da. And so this line right here is actually pretty darn simple. It's just going to translate into now is the time for action. So now let's just break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have the word ima, which means now. And this is actually going to be the word that we are going to modify with koso or add koso right after. So obviously note here, like I said earlier, this right here is going to be a time-related word. Ima means now. That is indicative of some kind of time. And so this is a really common word used with koso. So ima koso is just gonna, well, we can't really translate it yet because it wouldn't make sense. Let's move on with the rest of the sentence. Right after koso, we have the noun koudou, and this is going to mean basically just action. It's going to be part of a noun modification here. So this is going to be the first noun in this noun of a noun modification. Right after it, we put the particle no to instigate the modification. Then we have our second noun, which is just going to be toki, which means time. So koudou no toki is going to be time for action, basically, or time of action. And this is going to actually end the sentence. So now we just insert the da copula and our sentence is complete. Ima koso koudou no toki da. And this is going to translate to, again, now is the time for action. So let's trace back and evaluate what's going on here. We have the koso modifying the word ima. If we weren't using this grammar pattern here of koso to emphasize the word ima or now, then we would have just used wa. So it would have just been ima wa koudou no toki da, and that would have been it's the time for action right now. However, because we use koso, like I said in the guideline earlier, we're going to drop that wa now, so it's going to be ima koso instead of ima wa. And so what the difference in the function or the expression here is just that there's an emphasis on that right now in particular is the time for actions. So instead of translating this to something like it's time for action, we translated it to now is the time for action to kind of emphasize that it's right now that is the time for action. Okay, so that example sentence was pretty simple if I do say so myself. Let's move on to the next one. For our next example sentence, we have the line kondo koso unten menkyo o shutoku suru. And what this line is going to translate to is basically, I'm going to get my driver's license next time for sure. Okay, so let's break down this sentence bit by bit. First up, we have the word kondo, and this is actually going to be another time-related word, it's going to translate to this time or next time, depending on the context of the sentence. In this case, it's going to translate to next time. And again, this first word in the sentence is actually going to be the word that we're just going to modify with kozo right off the bat. So then kondo kozo is going to translate to something along the lines of next time definitely, or next time in particular, or next time for sure. We're going to go with for sure. And so that basically covers the whole grammar pattern that we're talking about part of this sentence. The rest is just going to be what's going to happen for sure next time, and that's going to be unten menkyo, which is going to translate to driver's license. We have the direct object marker o to mark that as the direct object to the verb that's about to come, which is the verbal noun shutoku suru, which means to obtain or to acquire, and that's pretty much the whole sentence right there. Kondo kozo unten menkyo o shutoku suru is going to translate to next time I'm going to get my driver's license for sure, and of course the emphasis there is translated to for sure. Alright, so we're going to do a little kind of sidelining here, and we're going to talk about this really common phrase in Japanese that goes something along the lines of kochira kozo. And this is something that is commonly said when somebody else thanks you or says something polite to you. You say kochira kozo, and the kozo in that kochira kozo is actually the same particle that we're talking about here. So our quick example is just going to be someone says to you, arigatou gozaimasu. This is going to be thank you very much. Then you'll go, kochira kozo arigatou gozaimasu. And so that phrasing might be too obscure for you to be able to connect this with how it works with kozo. So I'm just going to explain that really quick, the meaning behind one of the most common expressions in Japanese. The word kochira is going to be a kind of directional word in which it's using that kind of ko prefix, which is in the word kochi or kono or kore. This is going to be basically those words will be like this or here, and the kind of nuance is that it's something in your direction, in your belonging, kind of on your side. So kochira is going to basically be my side or my party, something along those lines. Then we just add the particle kozo right after that to emphasize it. So what this expression is really saying, someone thanks you and you say kochira kozo, this will translate to something along the lines of no, I'm the one who should be thanking you. So you should be able to see here how the emphasis of kozo is on the word kochira, which means basically my side. So it's my side, it is kind of italicized, is my side who should be the one thanking. So it emphasizes that you're the one who should be honored more so than the other party. And then you just say arigatou gozaimasu right back to them to pretty much come through with that. So if you're saying I should be the one saying thank you, then you should say thank you very much. So kochira kozo is going to be basically being, oh no, it's my side or it's me who should be doing this to you. Another really common case of that is when someone says yoroshiku onegaishimasu, and that's going to be basically nice to meet you or something along those lines, pleasure to meet you. You can say kochira kozo to mean, oh no, the pleasure is all mine, basically. Okay, moving on, we're gonna do kozo with another really common case of it. This time it's going to be after the conjunction kara, which means because. And basically when you add this after kara, it's going to emphasize the reasoning behind something. And so basically because this can appear after kara, and kara is just a conjunction that can appear after a clause, this basically just means we can use all types of words, nouns, adjectives, verbs before the kara that appears before the kozo. So in this case where kozo appears, it's basically working with all kinds of words, clauses in this case. So let's go through our first example of this. Mainichi renshu shita kara kozo suyoku natta. And so what this line is going to translate to is basically it's precisely because you practice every day that you've become strong. Let's break this down real quick. Mainichi, which is going to translate to every day. We have the verbal noun renshu suru, which is going to be in its past form, so suru turns into shita. Then we have the word kara to mean because. Then we add kozo, the particle, to emphasize that. So mainichi renshu shita kara kozo is going to be precisely because you practiced every day. And so now we give the result of that because, which is just going to be suyoku natta, and that's going to be the adjective suyoi in its adverbial form, suyoku. Then we add the naru because of that grammar pattern of adjective plus naru means to become that adjective. And so naru is going to be conjugated into its ta form as well because they already became strong. So suyoku natta, became strong. Mainichi renshu shita kara kozo suyoku natta. It's exactly because you practiced every single day that you became strong. Alright, let's move on to another example. Using this kind of case, we're going to use a noun instead. So we have a very simple boken dakara kozo omoshiroi. And so this is a really simple line. It's going to translate to, it's an adventure. That's exactly why it's so fun. So we see here that boken is the noun word for adventure. We have the copula da to end that clause because we're just saying boken, so it is an adventure, so boken da. Then we have the kara to mean because, and then the kozo to add the emphasis. So it's exactly because it's an adventure. Our end translation isn't quite that wording. Then we end the sentence with an adjective, omoshiroi, which means fun or interesting. So, boken dakara kozo omoshiroi. And our translation is, it's an adventure. That's exactly why it's so fun. So notice the emphasis there, of course. Okay, so the last thing we're going to cover with this topic, kozo, is when we use it with verbs without the usage of the conjunction kara. So when we do this, the verb is either going to be in its te form or in its ba form. In the te form, it carries kind of a different translation. For the ba form, it's basically going to be the same expression as doing kara kozo. So a verb kara kozo to mean it's exactly because or it's precisely because. That's going to be the same thing for the ba. But when we're using the te form of verbs, the meaning that's going to take on instead is kind of like it's only when you do verb that this happens. So first, let's go through an example of that te form version. So our line is going to read, Mainichi doryoku shite koso me ni mieru keka ga arawareru. And so what our translation of this line is going to be is essentially, only when you put in effort every single day will you be able to see results appear before you, basically. So again, let's break down this sentence bit by bit. This is very simple to the previous one that we did. First up, again, we have mainichi, which is going to translate to basically every single day, every day. Instead of renshu suru, which means to practice, we have another verbal noun, which is doryoku suru, which is going to basically mean to put in effort. However, of course, this time it's going to be conjugated to its te form because that's what we're covering. So the te form is just going to be suru changed into shite. So then doryoku shite, and this is going to be right before our particle, kozo. So kozo is going to be emphasizing everything that we just said before, which is mainichi doryoku shite, which is going to be put in effort every day. So then this first part's going to translate to something only when you put in effort every single day. And now we explain what happens when you do that, and that is going to be me ni mieru keka ga arawareru. So me ni mieru is going to be a kind of phrasing that means something that is visible, clearly visible. That's going to be modifying the noun keka, which is going to translate to basically results. We're going to mark results with a ga to make it a subject because it's going to be performing an action, which is the verb arawareru, which means basically to appear. So me ni mieru keka ga arawareru is going to be results that you can see appear. So only when you put in effort every day will you be able to see results appear, basically, is what this is going to translate to entirely. Mainichi doryoku shite koso me ni mieru keka ga arawareru. And so yeah, hopefully you can see how that is slightly different from precisely because you practice every day, you can see results appear before you. This is kind of more like only when you do that can you do or can this happen. But let's go back to that other one, only because we're going to cover one example sentence with the ba form of verbs now, which is going to be the same meaning as kara kozo, which is precisely because or exactly because, or yeah. So for our last example sentence, we have the line shoko ga areba koso hannin o mitsuketa. Okay, so this line is going to translate to basically we were able to determine the culprit only because we had evidence. So shoko is going to translate to evidence. It's a noun. We have the ga aru grammar pattern, which is just existential. So there is evidence or had evidence. So ga aru, but aru is of course going to be conjugated into its ba form because that's what we're doing here with this grammar pattern. So aru turns into areba, then we slap on kozo right after that. So that's going to be emphasizing the shoko ga aru parts. So this doesn't just translate to because there was evidence, it translates to only because there was evidence. Then we say what happened because or only because there was evidence, and that is hannin o mitsuketa, and that's going to be the word criminal or culprit, hannin, plus the direct object marker o to mark it as a direct object to the verb mitsukeru, which means to find. And mitsukeru is going to be conjugated to its ta form because it's happened in the past. So found the culprit or determined the culprit or caught the culprit. So altogether, once again, shoko ga areba koso hannin o mitsuketa. We were only able to capture the criminal because we had evidence. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this lesson topic of koso. We went through a number of example sentences because there were a lot of different cases in which it appears. Let's do a little review real quick. Kozo basically appears with words, clauses, and even phrases. So common ones are time-related nouns, demonstrative pronouns, but it can also be used after the conjunction kata to basically add emphasis to the reasoning behind something. So it turns into not because, but precisely because or exactly because. And what that in turn means that we can use all kinds of words before kata, before kozo. Then lastly, when it's used with verbs without the conjunction kata, those verbs can be in their te form to change the meaning to kind of only when you do something, not so much because you do something. Then the ba version basically has the same meaning as kata kozo, which is only because or precisely because. And so yeah, that's about gonna wrap up this video for the particle kozo, adding emphasis to the thing immediately preceding it. Hopefully you learned a couple of things. Remember to check out the description or the link in the description to our website or our social networks with the post that has the complete script to this with more example sentences, and tune in next time.